Well, this is that 64 AC30. We're about done with it now. I got to check some hardware stuff that I ordered. You saw me make these changes in this area before, and I've got the permanently installed cathode resistor and bypass cap now, and the cathode resistor, 68 ohms, turned out to be the right value. They're idling at about 13.5 watts with 120 volts walls mains voltage. Before, there was a bad splice here on this primary, but I noticed that there was a lot of wire that was all twisted together, and when I untwisted it, I had enough length for the primary to reach. Twisting primaries, that's not really necessary. It's more about cable management than noise. So I did the Marshall trick with just some heat shrink just to keep it, all together. And there's nothing else near it really. So it's absolutely fine. And this gave us the length for this primary connection without using an ugly splice. So I'll show a NASA splice next time as necessary. Over here, this had a 3-terminal terminal strip here with this lug here being ground. And I did not want the ground for the vibrato channel filter node here. At this point, I wanted it tied in with everything else. So I replaced that with a 4-terminal strip. So the ground of this filter cap is going here, and that then goes to a different part of the board, and that can really help with noise. Now, there were 2 mistakes I made on this amp in the previous videos. First of all, I showed disconnecting this, what I called a white wire, turned out to be pink. I'm red-green colorblind, and I thought it was just a white wire that had gotten dirty. Because I thought it was the heater center tap, because I've been doing too many fenders recently, and even though I know this, I know the AC30 very, very well, I know that's not the heater center tap. I just had a brain fart in public. This is actually the shield wire for this transformer. So I reconnected that. So disregard that thing in the last video. The moving these, putting the artificial center tap here for the heaters is important. Let me show you where the actual heater ground connection in the stock amp was made, and that I undid it so that this can take over. Sorry about that. The other mistake I made was saying that this output transformer, while it looked unusual, might have been original. I had said that this might have been original, but it seemed odd because I had not seen this, and I knew that this was a brand that Vox was using in the much later amps, or were used in amps that were called Voxes. Turns out that this company only started doing business as this brand in 1970. So this transformer is not original, but it is pretty much a period correct transformer, and it is the same specs, and it sounds just fine. So that's something where I just did not know. It happens. For any originality purists, be warned, you may get the vapors in this next section. When an amp comes in that's already had a lot of work done on it, or if it is in bad shape and is player's grade, I will consult with the owner and offer them some changes beyond the original circuit, which do result in a better amp. If a completely original example comes in where everything's just perfect and it just needs a few things, I don't want to make any changes to it. But once an amp needs a lot of work, my rationale is might as well make it a really great amplifier as opposed to a really accurate representation of whatever is made in whatever year. And that's all done in consultation with the owner. It's not me imposing my view on the world. It's an option I give to owners. This owner chose to take me up on it. So some non-JMI stuff here, which brings out the best of this JMI circuit. First of all, we're not using the voltage selector switch, which would have its center here. That wire is this wire. I've just moved it here to the 120 volt tap, 117, whatever it is. So if he ever goes to another country, he can move this or reuse this switch, but this switch becomes unreliable, and it's not a good thing to have your mains connection unreliable. So the hot goes here to the fuse, and then from the fuse to this side of the switch, which is going to one of the primaries. The other primary is connected here. So that's a modern safety code implementation. I've got the dual 8 from F&T here, and I've got the 30 here, but they're not going to ground at the chassis here. They're both going to ground at this board terminal here, and that is connected to other parts of the ground on this board, and there are grounds on this board, and they are all joined together from here to here, and the 30 microfarad that I showed you before that was moved to the 4-terminal block, that ground is coming up here to the same point. So we've got the main dual 16 going to chassis in the other location, as well as the cathode bias stuff. But all the other grounds are going to ground here, and this bus wire is not grounded to a point here by V1 anymore. When editing this, I realized I forgot to show you where the old grounds were made. This board and this board, the grounds were made to here, and through this board that grounded the bus wire and eventually the input jacks. And there was a wire going from pin 4 here, this heater connection, to this as well. And that's one of the problems with the AC30, the JMIs, is that they ground out one half of the heaters. So you definitely want to remove that wire and do the artificial center tap or some other reference for the ground other than just having one side grounded out like an old champ. The rest of this is optional, but it does give a good result to move the chassis ground location to the input jack, as I show. But to a new ground lug that I installed over here, right by the input jacks. So the input jacks come in, and there's a path to ground, chassis ground right here that really lowers RF. So all the grounds in the entire amp, aside from the reservoir and screen, and because I can't separate those, and the cathode, are made right here. And that is a dedicated ground connection to chassis for that. I also did a dedicated chassis connection here for the AC safety ground. I had to replace this bus wire because I had to replace the input jacks. All 6 input jacks were mechanically very weak. They just did not retain a cable at all. And the resistors were really noisy, especially on the top boost channel. Those old carbon comps, there's still quite a few in the amp. I don't change them if I don't need to. But they're very subject to humidity and yuck in the air, and the ones on the input jack are more exposed to that than others. And I had to get rid of them. They were noisy, they're microphonic, and the jacks were just physically worn out. It's a mechanical connection. It has a lifespan. So I recreated it so the bus wire back here goes like this, and then comes up and then over, and it's all this stuff. It's a pain in the butt to do, but it's well worth it. Something which is probably standing out is this nice new pot here in place of the old switch for the vibrato speed, the tremolo and vibrato speed. Instead of a choice of 3 resistors, 1 meg, 512K, and 330K, it is now a 3.3 meg pot with a 330K limiter. So the max speed, the fastest speed, is still that of the JMI. And as you turn this pot down, you will get to 512, you'll get to 1 meg, the stock Vox values, but you can also go quite a bit slower, and it's a nice thing. And, the owner said, yes, please. Gives a lot more range, does not change the fundamental characteristic. What does some changes which people might clutch their pearls over, I reversed the wires on the cut circuit pot. This blue wire was over here because the way the pot taper works, it had all the useful change bunched up in a very narrow range over here, and now it's all in a gradual useful range using this pot. It was basically wired as reverse audio that worked counterclockwise. Now it worked. It's an audio taper, not a reverse audio. This is hard to talk about. It's easy to show. I'll show you that in a little bit, but it just makes it nicer for the player. There's not a narrow sweet spot. It's a nice wide range that gradually makes a change. So counterclockwise is darker now, as opposed to clockwise being dark. Here on the treble and bass pots, I reverse the wiring, again to take advantage of the pots in the stock form. While I love the JMI top boost circuit, that treble will take your head off through this entire range. This entire range of the pot is bright, 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 and then abruptly gets dark and real mid-rangey. So now it's dark and mid-rangey, and then gradually gets brighter, gradually gets brighter, gradually gets brighter, then it's bright, bright, bright here. That's much nicer for the player, and as a result, I also reverse the bass pot just so that it makes sense to a player. This is a better use of the audio taper pots. It's still the JMI circuit. It still gets the exact same sounds. Nothing was sacrificed. It's just much easier for the player to dial in great sounds. You're not operating in a very small zone And if any knob gets bumped, all of a sudden it sounds terrible. This resistor measured like 18K, it's supposed to be 10K, so a new 10K there. Other than this 10K resistor, all these components are original, and this can be put back to stock very easily. You just move this wire to here, this wire to here, this cap to here, this cap to here, 10K to here, and the ground connection goes to here. So it's a 15-minute change back. If someone buys this amp in the future and wants the frustrating JMI tone stack experience, there you go. Other changes besides things where, the old 500 picofarad cap here that feeds the volume pot for the top boost channel, that thing was noisy microphonic and measured like 20 picofarad. It was so bright. So it's got a new 500 picofarad ceramic disc where resistors were noisy, or they put in badly tack soldered resistors. I've used almost all these half-watt carbon films. Here I used a half-watt carbon composite, a new one. All the bypass caps are these Vichys. Here, this cap was in really bad shape, so I put in a new 22 nanofarad Vichy as opposed to a 47. The normal channel on this was designed for all kinds of things to be used: bass, organ, accordion, whatever. It can become really tubby. So with the owner's input, I changed this to a 22. It really tightens up the low end. You still have tons of low end, especially in comparison to the top boost channel. It's a very nice channel for guitar. To help it out a little bit, I did add a 100 picofarad bright cap to this channel. Again, no permanent change to the amp. It can be taken out very easily, but it makes this channel sound more balanced. It doesn't make it sound bright. It makes it sound not dark. And if you want to do the Brian May thing and turn this all the way to 10, this cap's not in the circuit anyway. I'll show that. It's a nice thing to do. Other changes, pretty much just stock stuff. The original output caps, the 150 nanofarads, were leaking a lot, like 800 and 900 millivolts, which you could hear in the output. So it's got new Vichy 100 nanofarads because no one will hear the difference between 100 nanofarad and 150 nanofarad on these output caps. It's like a difference between high pass at 3 hertz versus 7 hertz. It's well below the range of human hearing, and none of that low stuff comes out of the output, makes it through the output transformer or the speaker anyway. So this is a much more available capacitor, and it fits physically very well. You will not perceive any difference with these. Anything else that stands out? I think that's about it. Want to hear it? All right, real fast. So this knob and this knob, one of them had a missing set screw. That actually, it was this knob and the knob that was here. This one had a missing set screw and was glued in place. This one had a broken set screw. And on the base pot was a non-original knob, which did not cosmetically match the others. But the set screw of that non-original knob fit on the old Bulgin here. So I was able to transfer that set screw here and make this Bulgin workable again. And I went through my stash of old parts and I found one set screw that could be used on the knob that used to be here that brought this, so I didn't have to glue this knob on. So of all the originals, all but one are original, and this is a cosmetically similar one on the cut circuit, but it's not exact. But the owner goes to guitar shows, like the Dallas Guitar Show and stuff. He's just going to keep an eye out for one of those on his travels. Until then, this modern production knob works just fine, and no one will really see it on stage except for him. So that was the best use of his money, we decided. Let's see. I'll start off without any jumpering tricks. I'm going to put the cut to noon, treble and bass to noon, everything else off. Minimum speed on the vibrato. We're going to start with trim as opposed to vibrato. Vibrato on the Vox is the phasey sound. Tremolo is more the choppy sound. It's got a new quad of Mullard current production EL84s because the old Softecs that were labeled Mesa had seen things, man, and they were drawing very different amounts of current, and you heard a big hum in the output. You will still hear a little bit of hum in the output, especially at power up. Let me demonstrate that in just a second. There's a little flap of paper on the choke that's come up. It's not affecting anything. All right, turn it on, and we're going to hear a hum that will then lower and decrease to a steady state as the four EL84s all draw current. So let's just listen for a bit. All right, that's reached pretty much a steady state. So other than that, which is common with a low filtered Vox, that's the sound of a healthy Vox. Let's listen to a few of the channels. And I'm not even using a pick for this. This is just straight in. I'll try to stay a little bit back so that the transformers and the pickups don't go crazy together. Here's the vibe drum. You'll notice that while the channel sounds really good, the vibe trim channel just has a lot less gain than the others, and that's just the nature of the world. You've got to really turn it up quite a bit, and about here it gets to have a little bit of balls. But it's a nice thing to have. Let me show you some of the tricks you can do. First of all, just do the normal channel by itself. And so this is the cut at noon, and just the normal channel. And there are no tone controls, which is why I thought it was nice to add that little bright cap just to take away the darkness. You can make it brighter with the cut knob. I need more coffee. My hands aren't working. This is as bright as this channel gets at a low volume with that bright cap. So it's really not. So that's nothing to worry about. Then you can blend the channels. Let's do the normal with some vibrato added to it. You can do this if you have an ABY switch. Got a little bit of radio happening right now, but there's no shielding. Just a little radio station pickup. Same trick works if you do the brilliant channel with the vibe trim. You can hear there's a phase shift as they get to certain volumes in relation to each other. That's a fun thing to exploit, with an ABY pedal. But when you're on the Brilliant channel, sorry, I'm really sloppy playing today, but I just want to demonstrate that high end is there. That's single coil noise, not the channel. That's not the amp. So all that works. You can do all the standard Vox-esque things that people want to do. Like I said, I'm not using a pick this morning. I'm just not feeling like committing that much. But you can also jumper this channel on mini amps like a Fender that are so out of phase that the result is really thin, like a Fender amp with reverb. But because there's a big frequency difference between these two channels, bringing a little bit of the normal with the Brilliant tightens the lows in a nice way, fills them out actually below a certain point, and gives you a mid scoop, which is very familiar to most Fender players. So. So all in all, while under the hood, things have changed from 1964. Everything that you could do in 64, you can still do. The noise floor is dramatically lower because of all the grounding changes I made. The tone knobs are both more intuitive and easier to navigate because you're not all just working in this kind of range. So if someone's used to an AC30 from this period and they come and play this, while their old settings might not work for them and they have to make some adjustments to that, but once they understand and they play around with it for 5 minutes, they're going to say, oh, yeah, that's easy. I got that. And no player would ever despise this unless, there's probably some case where someone only ever uses the 512K and that's their sound. And then they'd have to have someone measure the 512K position here, which would probably be right about here. Things like that. People will find nits to pick, but from a player's perspective, this thing is sounding great. So let me see if I can reunite it with its slider board and the cabinet, make sure the cabinet's good, make sure the speaker's good, and then maybe I'll get a better player who actually has hands that are awake to play for you guys. Until then, thanks for watching.